Okay, wait. Don't click off the video just yet. Wait, it's a good story, I promise. Let me tell you why I turned my desert sled into a sport touring bike and I didn't actually buy a new bike. Spoiler, it's because I am one cheap son of a... There were 3 motorcycles that came very, very close to getting me to sell this motorcycle and trading up to them. Let's talk about them really quick. Okay, the first bike on my shopping list, if you guys have watched the channel, you already know, it was the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE. I test rode that bike, I loved it. It's basically everything I wanted out of my sled, but more, bigger engine, heated grips, cruise control, more torque, more long travel suspension. It was a really nice bike, this sport naked adventure thing, but it was gonna be like $18,000 out the door spec the way I wanted it to, and the sled's only worth about 7,500 bucks. So I was gonna be all in like 11 grand to get that motorcycle. Yeah, not really worth it. The second bike was a Ducati Desert X. I've test ridden that bike, I've ridden it, I loved it. I think it looks so cool. It also is like my desert sled, but just a little bit better in every way. Better engine, more power, kind of comfier ergonomics, better long distance, better off-road chops. Kind of starts to make the case for itself. You can even get auxiliary fuel pods with it, and it's only gonna run you like 20-something thousand dollars out the door, so that was gonna be 13,000 bucks, and I'd lose my sled. And the third option was the BMW S1000 XR. Super awesome, top of the line sport touring bike. I've also ridden that one, freaking loved it. It was so sweet, it rode so well, made a tremendous amount of power, silky smooth delivery, all the farkles and everything. But yeah, I configured it in the BMW thing, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be like a $28,000 motorcycle. And I was like, all right, Ian, let's take a step back. Before we pull out the checkbook and just yeet 20 G's on a motorcycle, what is it that I actually want this bike to do? And there were a couple key features I was really looking for. The first thing I wanted was a tubeless wheel and tire setup. The Desert Sled comes with tubed wheels and tires, and for long distance riding, if you get a flat, that's just kind of annoying. But I thought to myself, that's a solvable problem with this motorcycle, so what else do I want? Heated grips? Also kind of a solvable problem. Just chuck on heated grips on this motorcycle. Comfortable ergonomics? This thing sits really upright and nice. Cruise control? Could get a throttle lock. It's not so bad. So slowly but surely, my innate cheapness and just bastardly sense of not wanting to spend money crept in, and I realized that I could get my project done for not $8,000, $10,000, even $15,000. It was gonna be 600 bucks in a couple hours in the garage, and I could have a bike that was really gonna work for me. So let me walk you through the mods I did to this thing to get it to be truly sport touring spec. The first mod was to modify my wheels to become tubeless. Now, that was a very involved process, and I won't bore you with it, but basically, I had to take the wheels off, take the tire off, remove the interior sealing tape, reseal everything with marine grade sealant, retape it, put the tire back on, test it, see that air was leaking, redo the whole process over again until I finally got these wheels and tires to seat perfectly with a tubeless setup. Yeah, so this Desert Sled is now totally tubeless, and it's pretty awesome. And you'll see as well that I added a sneaky little mod to the wheel too. That is a tire pressure monitoring system. I installed that just to make sure my tires weren't running flat as I endeavored on this tubeless setup, and I actually thought it worked out pretty well. It's just a sweet little valve stem that attaches onto the tire and has a little mount on the handlebar that I'll show you right now. This tire pressure monitoring system is Bluetooth, so as you see here, you get your real-time tire PSI and temperature out of this little unit. You charge it up with a little wire on the battery, it attaches to the handlebars, and you can have tire pressure read for a couple of days from what I've seen. It's pretty sweet. Also, this shift lever peg speaks to the depravity of my cheapness. SW Motec wanted $60 for this part, so comment down below if that looks familiar to you and if you like my ingenious solution to a new shift lever peg. The other very important mod to any touring motorcycle is cruise control. I installed this Atlas throttle lock, which is pretty sweet. It's one of the best cruise control systems I've tried, but it wasn't without a little finessing to get this to install on my motorcycle. The Atlas throttle lock works simple enough. You open up the grip, you press this down, and the whole thing holds itself in place because of a friction pad right over here. It's easy enough to cancel. You press the X and you let it go. You can also twist it kind of freely whenever it's padded on the edge over here, which is really nice, allowing you to adjust if you're having a slight inclination on the motorcycle. However, getting this to work was complicated. Getting this small little teeth over here to fit against this, it meant that I had to grind down the actual throttle over here, and to get this friction pad to seat against this, which isn't completely around this edge, was complicated to say the least. I had to f***ing modify the throttle tube to make this piece of shit work, but it works now. You see the Atlas throttle lock, when it opens, you press that button and this little pad right here pushes against it. But this has an open space here, so I wasn't sure if I was gonna actually be able to run this because now the pad is a little bit clear of it. I've done some pretty extensive testing and it seems to work okay. My other favorite mod is of course the Brembo RCS 15 that I fitted onto this desert sled. I have direct line brakes, as you can see, that I've custom made myself for this motorcycle. The braking feel is impeccable. I also installed a very simple tail bag on this motorcycle. I actually had this sitting around the shop, and so I just kind of chucked it on. And back here, you got all kinds of stuff. You have a tire repair kit, you have an inflator kit for the eventual flat that you're gonna get, a nice little disc lock, and a couple other tools that I just keep in handy on this bike for longer rides. And if I wanted to go take a big tour, can put on some clothes or any kind of little things. I can also fit a Rotopax underneath this and make it a little bit taller, which was the setup I did when I rode this motorcycle down to Galeana, Mexico about 4 years ago. Of course, the other no-brainer mod is the rock form mount. I've got the charger here for my phone, also hooked up to the battery. I got a little cover for it as well, so this doesn't get wet or rusted out or anything. It just ends up seating right in here with the little rubber band. And this is a decently tidy setup. It's nice to be able to just chuck my phone on there if I need navigation or if I'm in a long trip and I need to know where I'm going. Of course, no touring motorcycle is complete without heated grips. These are the Oxford Intelligent Heat Controller heated grips. I picked these up on Amazon. I think they were like 70 bucks, 80 bucks, something like that. They came in check packaging, which was bizarre, but they work great. Heated grips on the bike. If you forget them on at 100%, it's intelligent and it'll be like, oh, your battery's not on or your bike's not on, and it'll just turn it off, which is really great. Game changer for the motorcycle, for sure, for long distance riding. And of course, because I am a good citizen of the world, I finally reinstalled mirrors on my motorcycle. So I just got some cheapo bar and mirrors, and these were good to go. So I hate to disappoint you, but this is my touring motorcycle for now. A big defining feature of your Papa Yam is not only is he a cheap son of a bitch, I also just don't really like spending money. I live below my means. I like saving and investing my money. I don't really feel like it's prudent to just nuke $15,000 on a motorcycle when this one works just fine and with a few modifications can be a great touring motorcycle. So I think I spent like $650 on everything, on all the different mods, and I probably spent a cumulative 6 or 7 hours in the garage fiddling with the tubeless wheels and the heated grips and installing some of the throttle lock took a long time. I'm not gonna lie, I was like 2 hours in the garage just to make that work correctly. So all that being said, let's go take her for a rip, shall we? See you guys out there on the road. And just like that, we're out on the road with the new sport touring sled, as I'm calling this bike. And it's such a sweet peach of a bike, man. You know, in doing all those mods and in looking at all those different motorcycles, I just thought, why don't I put my money where my mouth is, you know? I can have the bike that actually fits my needs, and I can save quite a bit of money doing so at the same time, you know? I think with us in motorcycling, we are ripe for over-consumerism and to just go out and buy the shiny, fancy new toy. But, you know, I tell you guys all the time, run what you brung, use the bike you got. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. This thing now works like a peach for what I needed it to. It was really cool that I had a bike that, you know, could serve the purpose I needed it to without too many modifications. I think if I had something like a Gixxer Thou or an H2, you know, maybe I would have wanted a very different motorcycle. But when you have a kind of standardized version of a bike, kind of like this Desert Sled is, it makes the whole thing a lot easier. You know, it makes the whole process a little bit easier if you want to modify it and do stuff with it. And it's why I bought this bike, and it's hard to believe I've owned it for 4.5 years now. So we're cruising along. You can see the tire PSI is being read here at 35 and 34, front and rear. As I told you guys in the shop, or rather my garage,
it won't read unless you're rolling, so this is now the accurate reading for it. Got my rock form out, phone charger if I need to, if I'm on long distance, and since it is a bit brisk today, we'll go ahead and turn on 50% on the heated grips. I opted to not go for the bark busters and the wind blockers. I didn't like the look of it for this build of the sled, and I was like, it's fine, don't worry about it. And look at that, we're cruising along, man. I'm gonna click it up into 5th gear. Let's turn on this cruise control, shall we? Which you guys will notice I will do with my index here because my thumb is nerve damage. So, yeah, look at that. Now we're cruising. I mean, this bike has truly become such a wonderful do-anything machine. And you turn it off just like that. Favorite mod I've done to this bike, as I mentioned, that RCS 19 brake lever, direct lines, and master cylinder setup has dramatically transformed the braking feel and performance of this bike. And the fact that it's a cable actuated throttle just feels so darn good. I have such a direct line to what this bike is doing, and I just really love that feeling. And the feeling of riding this bike and knowing exactly what it's going to do and how it behaves is so nice, man. It's so nice to be that intimately familiar with the motorcycle to understand exactly what it's going to do in almost every situation. And while I did mention, rather famously so at this point, I believe it was last year, that I did not want to ride off-road anymore, I think it's really cool that this bike has a 19-inch front wheel and a bit longer travel suspension, and it is more than happy trundling down a little gravel road or being a little bit more exploratory, shall we say. I think that's a really cool thing on the sled, and it's why ultimately I was like, like real sport touring, yeah, like it's cool, I do want that, the extra oomph and power is fun, but I think this 803cc twin has plenty of torque and poke for street riding, and it's fun because it has about 75 horsepower. It means I really get to use all 75 of those ponies. I'm using the torque more often than not rather than the actual ponies, but you guys know what I mean. And they don't make this bike anymore, so this is now a bit of a collector's item. Those who know about the Desert Sled know what a great motorcycle it is, man. This is a really cool, like, new age scrambler bike, which is why I was interested in the Triumph 1200. That's a really good motorcycle. As I told you guys back in the garage, it's fantastic, you know? Like, that bike is really awesome, but it's hard to justify, you know, what was it going to be, like $9,000 or $10,000 to have that experience when I can spend $600 and make the sled basically what I need it to be, and it will still happily pop a little wheelie if it wants to. It's such a great motorcycle. And if nothing else, look at it this way. I'm not trying to blow smoke up my own butt, but I've ridden a lot of bikes. I think I'm up to like 170 different motorcycles. I've bought and given away 50 of them. I've got the chance to ride a ton of motorcycles, and still, this bike, I come back to it year after year, month after month. It is so sweet of a ride. It is so just, And now I have all the emotions out of it too, you know? I have all the emotions of riding and owning this bike, maintaining it. I've got the factory service manual for it. Let's go ahead and, get that in there. Pick it up off that apex. You can just do it, man. It's so much fun. But yeah, it's just, one of those things where I think this bike has tons of character, and I have a lot of emotion attached to it now. I want to own it forever. It's become a Daytona level bike for me. I think this motorcycle has really become like such a, how do I even put this, like such a career defining bike for me. It's everything I want out of a street bike. It's not too powerful. It can do just about anything. It's not that great at any particular thing, and it's a ton of fun to use. Listen to that roar from that 803 twin. It's great. Super enjoyable to use, man. What I always found funny about this bike is, despite it's on you know, Pirelli Rally Scorpion STRs, and despite the fact that the geometry is very like scramblery, dual sporty, kind of like, you know, rugged bike, this bike's a ton of fun in the twisties. It's got this huge wide handlebar, so you have a ton of leverage over it, and you just find yourself wanting to just flick it in hard, really enjoying it. And again, you can feel the limits so much sooner than a sport touring bike, and that's really fun, you know. Now granted, I know I'm giving up many things by not getting a new motorcycle. I'm not a fool, you know. I've ridden the 3 bikes that I almost purchased, the 3 bikes that I almost upgraded to. I've ridden all of them, and they are phenomenal motorcycles, and I very much came close to buying all of them at different times in the last 2 months or so. But at the end of the day, they weren't awesome enough to justify spending so much money to get functionally the same experience, you know? Like, yes, the Triumph is a little bit more pokey, and it's a little bit more tall, and it's a little bit more adventure-y and rugged, and yes, the Desert X is just such a good motorcycle. You know, even if I was gonna do the regular road touring stuff with it, it would still do phenomenal at that. And I kind of felt the Desert X, I was like, well, if I'm not really doing like hardcore adventure riding, like kind of what is the point of me getting a Desert X other than it looks really cool? And that's a totally valid reason to buy a bike, and I almost did that. But again, it would have cost me 12 or 13 grand to get that done. You know, it's not a crazy amount of money, and I could have done it, but I'm just in this kind of minimalist mindset nowadays. And then the BMW XR, what a great bike. But ultimately, do you really need 170 ponies at your disposal? You know, I kind of rode this bike more and more, the sled, and I was like, man, I'm having a lot of fun with this amount of power. It's truly enjoyable to use. 75 horsepower, 50 foot-pounds of torque. And the other big elephant in the room is, other than the Desert X, was weight, you know? The Desert Sled is pretty lightweight. It only weighs about 450 pounds, which is great, you know, for the amount of suspension travel it has and the power it has. It's honestly pretty solid. You know, the Triumph is, I think, 530 or 40 pounds. It's almost 100 pounds heavier than this bike. It's like a proper naked adventure bike. The Desert X is a little bit better. I think it weighs 450 or 460, kind of similar to what this one does. And then the BMW is a pretty big beast too. I think it's 500 something pounds. And so I like a motorcycle that's a little bit lighter on its feet, a little bit more manageable from that perspective. Oh, that cable throttle. Get those perfect downshifts with this thing. Grab a gear up because it's got torque for it, baby. Let's lay into it a little bit. Oh, that RCS works beautifully. Oh, look at this thing. Yeah, I know it's not for everybody. I know some people want more sport, some people want more adventure, some people want more touring, but for the kind of riding I do, which I want to do longer distance things with this bike, and I have. I think I did a nice 300-mile ride the other day with it, and I'm going to go out to Big Bend with it, and I think I set it up well enough so that it can tackle the longer distance stuff without making me really want to just kind of shoot my brains out. The one thing I still need to figure out if it's going to be okay with this bike on a proper long distance, because I think from here to Big Bend, I'm going to do about 9 hours in the saddle to get to Alpine, which is the location, because I'm taking all these back roads. I need to see about the wind protection, or lack thereof. I rode this bike down to Mexico in 2019. I did 10 hours in the saddle. I remember the saddle being a little tough. I think I might want to swap in a comfort seat, and then I also wanted to see about putting a little fly screen just to help with the wind buffeting a little bit. It is functionally a naked bike, and you just have to deal with that chest right here, but I like the look of it, and I actually don't mind the feeling of the wind on my chest. I didn't want like a Goldwing style bike where I don't feel anything. I really don't prefer that. I think it's a lot more fun to ride a motorcycle where you can feel things on it. go ahead and bank a U-turn here. Nobody. Okay, we're good. Oh, that braking feel on this is just so good. And that's my thing too. All these other bikes I was looking at, they don't have a brake feel like this. This was a really annoying modification I had to do to this bike. It took a long time to get it sorted. I had to get custom brake lines and measure them and do it all correctly. Delete the old ABS system. It wasn't that easy to not have front ABS, but goodness gracious, the feel at the front lever here is just so good. Oh, I have so much stopping power and feel over that bike. And that comes from all my club racing stuff. I mean, when you're on track, you want that brake feel, and I love having the brake feel on this bike. Oh yeah. Just a phenomenal ride. So guys, I hate to disappoint, but at the same time, I feel like I owed this video to you because I told you guys this is what I was doing. I was like, I'm gonna do like a touring bike thing, and I'm a cheap son of a bitch. What can I say? I didn't want to spend 10 G's on a bike that was gonna do the same thing this one could do, and I didn't want to get rid of this bike. I love this motorcycle. So we're gonna spend this year, do some longer trips with the sled. If I find that it's not cutting the mustard, so to speak, you know, for doing that sort of thing, I'll get another bike, it's fine. But I think for now, I'm really excited to see what this bike can do, how it'll feel going on a big trip with it, and how cool is it gonna look out there in Big Bend. Because I've taken this bike out there before, and it just looks so good in the desert. Almost like it's called a desert sled. So guys, thanks so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. Catch you in the next one. See you later.